Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Planning Committee. I am Councillor Emma Sidhu. I'm the chair of the committee. Please be aware this meeting is being filmed, live streamed and will be loaded on the council's YouTube channel. If members like to introduce themselves, please.
Councillor Max Mosley, Brentford East.
Councillor Marina Sharma, Brentford East.
Councillor Dan Bowring, Simon Brentford Lock.
Councillor Farah Kamran, Hanwell Park Ward.
Councillor Danish Said, Hounslow East.
Councillor Hina Mir, Feltham West.
Councillor Adish, Councillor Adish for one Bedford.
Councillor Sarah Raza, Hounslow South.
Councillor Tom Bruce, Hounslow South.
Councillor John Stratter, Isleworth.
And do we have any apologies of absence?
I've had apologies from councillors Ghazala Butt and John Todd, Chair.
And nobody else? No. Okay. I go through the minutes of the last meeting. If you all read that, can we agree the meeting's minutes? Agreed? Sorry. No, I'll do that next. Declarations of interest. Any members declare any interest or any communications they have regarding the evening's applications for decisions? Tom?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to declare in my role as lead member for Regeneration and Development, I've had a number of meetings on both of the applications in front of us this evening, particularly the Sega site. Officers have always been present when any of the applicants have been there and presenting previous iterations of the scheme in front of me. I've also had an email, I imagine everybody did as well, from Brentford Voice, Jim Straw of Brentford Voice, around the Brentford Fountain that I think everybody has seen as well. But as I've said previously, I don't believe any of the meetings I've had or anything means that I need to step outside this meeting for any item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor John Strater.
I had a presentation for the Brentford Works from the developer. Also received a copy of their brochure and emails from Brentford Voice, and also had emails about the second agenda item as well.
Thank you, Chair. I've had emails with regards to item number 2 on the agenda this evening, and also I've had meetings with the developers with regards to Brentford Works from previous iterations as well as this one, and obviously the same emails that the majority of us have received also, and also it's in our ward.
Thank you. That's Mosley.
The same.
Yeah. And Dan Bowring.
More or less most of the stuff everyone else has described, but also one resident has been emailing me regarding item number 5.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to introduce the lead officers, please.
Jimmy Walsh, legal advisor to the committee.
Vincent Akavara, Director of Planning and Buildings.
I'm Matthew Rees, Head of Development Management.
Nathan Ringer, Principal Strategic Planning Officer.
Rob Heslop, Head of Transport Planning and Road Safety.
Thank you. There are 2 applications for decision to consider by members this evening, all of which will proceed in the same way as followed. A report will be presented by an officer who will highlight the main points. The officer will then respond to questions from the members of the Planning Committee. Okay, we'd like to go to the first application, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Before I begin my presentation, I do have a short verbal addendum to make. So on the front page of my report, there is a recommendation box at the bottom. It currently states that a resolution for the approval of planning application is therefore recommended, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and recommended conditions. This should read, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and recommended conditions and referral to the GLA. So the application is being presented this evening, and the associated listed building consent at number 27 and 1053 Great West Road is for the redevelopment of the site to provide 856 new homes across 12 to 18 stories, including 266 affordable homes split across the social rent and shared ownership tenures. The application also includes over 7,000 square meters of employment floor space, including retail, food and beverage, F&B, and workshops on the ground floor and co-working at first floor level. The listed building consent relates to the relocation of the Brentford Fountain to the land within the development site. The site is within the Great West Corridor opportunity area, and the red line boundary for the site is now shown on the screen. The proposed development would optimize the development capacity of this underutilized brownfield site within the Great West Corridor. It will deliver new homes, including affordable homes alongside public realm, connectivity, and environmental improvements. While there is some less than substantial heritage harm, this is outweighed by the significant public benefits. The proposal would also be highly sustainable, achieving an overall minimum 67% reduction in emissions. It would also achieve an urban greening factor rating of 0.4, a biodiversity net gain of 38.57%, and a net increase of 105 trees on site in accordance with policy. The plan now shown on the screen is the existing aerial image and shows the site in the wider context. The site is bound by the A4 and elevated M4 motorway to the north, with Parkview Apartments and EMC Tower on the opposite side of the carriageway. Directly to the south is the freight line and the location of the future Lionel Road station for the West London Orbital line and the GTEC Community Stadium. Directly to the east is Kia Motors and Q Bridge Distribution Centre to the west on the opposite side of Lionel Road South. The site is comprised of two plots of land that front Great West Road, number 27 and number 1053, along with 250 surface level car parking spaces. 27 Great West Road, now shown on the screen, is a 7-story multi-let office building that was formerly the Sega HQ. It's comprised of almost 12,000 square meters of office floor space and has the frontage and vehicular access from a roundabout on Lionel Road South. The building is currently only partially occupied. 1053 Great West Road is a part 1-story warehouse comprised of 1,481 square meters of floor space, with the lawful use being used Class B8. The site is within the Great West Corridor opportunity area, which is allocated to deliver 7,500 new homes and 15,000 new jobs. An outline of the opportunity area is now shown on the screen. The site is also proposed to be released from its existing LSIS designation within the local plan review and is to be allocated Site 28 within the emerging local plan to provide a minimum of 500 homes, 990 square meters of retail floor space, and 18,870 square meters of business floor space. This emergent allocation is considered to have moderate weight in the determination of this application due to its relatively advanced stage, with the local plan review now submitted to the Secretary of State. The proposed development would accord with the majority of the requirements of the site allocation. It would deliver an appropriate quantum of housing together with 1,195 square meters of retail and F&B floor space and 4,259 of industrial floor space that would meet identified need and provide employment floor space in line with the objectives of the allocation and the opportunity area. The principal area of non-compliance relates to the quantum of business floor space, which does fall materially below the 18,000 square meters identified in the allocation, with only 2,006.2 square meters proposed. And while the scheme would result in a net loss of jobs compared to the existing situation and the allocation, the configuration of employment space and the layout of the proposal is considered to represent an optimum arrangement that balances the varying planning objectives for this site. The layout responds to market demand as set out by the commercial strategy and trends for HQ buildings, and it's considered that the quantum and type of commercial floor space proposed by the scheme would support the objectives of the Great West Corridor Creative Enterprise Zone. A proportion of co-working floor space and the workshop floor space will also be secured at 20% discount market rent for a period of 15 years. The plan on the screen at the moment shows the distribution of both the co-working and workshop floor spaces. On the top of the screen is the co-working space, and the green number 3 indicates where the affordable workspace would be. whereas on the ground floor plan, the blue markings indicate the industrial, the warehouse properties, again with the green numbers indicating the units that would be designated as affordable workspace. The scheme would also provide active frontage to the Great West Road and the new public square, and would successfully co-locate the delivery of new homes with the continued provision of employment space, therefore positively responding to the allocation. The scheme being presented this evening is the product of a close to 2-year determination period, with 13 PPA sessions between the council and applicant prior to submission and over the course of the determination period. The meetings held during the determination period focused on building heights, townscape and heritage views, urban design, placemaking and built form, residential quality, affordable housing and viability, environmental impacts and the public benefits. These discussions were also informed by the consultation responses from statutory and key stakeholders. Wholesale amendments were then received in November 2024, which included the reduction of height across blocks A, B, C and D of up to 20 metres, reduction of 60 homes, increase in height of block E of +3 stories, podium setback up to 6.5 metres away from the Great West Road, introduction of a new arcade link between the Golden Mile Square and the Great West Road, additional TfL safeguarding land, increase in public realm and open space, increase of communal amenity space, 12+ play space provided on site, and the affordable provision maintained at 35% with an increase in social rent based on habitable room calculations. This is the originally submitted CGI for the proposal, and it shows the maximum height of 19 stories. This visual shows the current submission with annotations showing where the height has been redistributed, taking the height away from the blocks on the east and redistributing them to the west. Further amendments were also received in July 2025 to address objections from Brentford Football Club related to counter-terrorism. Following a series of meetings between the council, the applicant, Brentford Football Club, and the counter-terrorism security advisors, the CTSA, who are part of the Met Police. Following the submission of the revised scheme with relocated balconies, Brentford Football Club removed their objection to the proposal and provided a letter setting out their support for the scheme on the basis that the following conditions and obligations are secured: to restrict the hours of construction work, restrict access to the roof space and roof terraces during match days, the recording of fob access, subject to the balcony screening being installed prior to occupation, and finally, management agreements for the construction and operational phase. These conditions and obligations have been agreed by the applicant and shall be secured by the permission and associated legal agreement, given the club and applicant are in agreement regarding the proposed mitigation measures, and subject to the conditions, the CTSA do not object to the scheme in this regard. Conditions will also require the submission of further details in relation to the public square and will require a gold secured by design accreditation to be achieved. The proposed site plan is now shown on the screen, illustrating the arrangement of commercial space, commercial uses through the site and the distribution of landscaping through the scheme. The new public square is shown to the bottom left of the plan, which is connected to the Great West Road via an arcade link and via Lionel Road South. The clean air route is also shown along the southern side of the site to provide pedestrians with an alternative to the Great West Road. And the proposal would safeguard the land for the development of the future Lionel Road station, as shown on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. The image on the screen now shows a visual of the workshops along the clean air route. This visual shows the new public square, and this visual, the arcade link to the new square from Great West Road. The table on the screen now shows the breakdown of the affordable housing and housing size mix. The application has followed the viability tested route and proposes an overall affordable housing provision of 31% by overall dwellings, 35% by habitable room, equating to 266 dwellings in total, which would be contained to Block A with some shared ownership homes distributed throughout Blocks B and D. The overall provision of affordable housing would be comprised of a 49-51 split between social rent and shared ownership homes on a per unit basis, and a 52-48 split on a habitable room basis, equating to 130 social rented dwellings and 136 shared ownership dwellings. The submitted financial viability assessment has been reviewed by the council's independent surveyor, and the proposed provision of affordable housing is considered to represent the maximum amount that could be provided on site. The provision of 266 affordable homes in this location is a significant public benefit in the planning balance, which assists in mitigating the various harm identified in my report that would be associated with the scheme. Should the application be recommended for approval, the delivery of affordable housing will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. Whilst the overall housing mix departs from the percentages set out in both the adopted and emerging local plan evidence, the proposed balance of units reflects the site's characteristics and the wider policy context. The scheme is in an opportunity area and an urban location with higher public transport accessibility, where London Plan Policy H10 recognises that a greater proportion of smaller homes can be considered appropriate. Importantly, this scheme secures a suitable and appropriate provision of family-sized homes within the social rented tenure, including 4-bedroom homes, which is where the need is most acute. When these factors are considered alongside the strategic aim in London Plan Policies D3 and H10 to optimise the capacity of sites, the proposed mix is deemed to strike an appropriate balance between meeting local needs, responding to the nature of the site, and ensuring the scheme can come forward. Turning to the design and heritage impacts, the CGI of the proposal is again shown on the screen. Starting from the left-hand side of the image, Block A would have a maximum height of 18 stories, Block B 14, Block C 12, Block D 17, and finally Block D 18 stories. As this shows, the general cluster of buildings now features a more uniform height, embracing the prominence of the flanking structures to the east and the west, and reinforcing the bookend perception of the scheme. On balance, it's considered the height, scale, and mass of the proposed development would relate successfully to its context, while optimizing the development capacity of the site and seeking to protect occupiers from adverse environmental conditions. The materiality and detailing, the identity and character, movement patterns, and landscape design all ensure that high-quality development would be delivered. Before turning to heritage impacts, the visual on the screen shows the cumulative schemes that have been considered within the Built Heritage and Townscape Visual Impact Assessment. And it's important to just distinguish what buildings the colours relate to, as we can see these wire lines in some of the AVRs. So starting from the left-hand side of the screen, the green is the proposal we are considering this evening, the Sega site. The yellow is the Duffy site, the outline consent. The Brentford Stadium itself is in orange. The residential phases associated with Brentford Stadium in purple, Capitol Court in red, Capitol Interchange Way in light blue, the Citron site in dark blue, B&Q light yellow, and finally Holly House in dark purple. For the heritage impacts, the significance of the affected heritage assets and the full objections received from consultees are set out within my report. But to remind members, objections have been received from Historic England, ICOMOS, which is the International Council on Monuments and Sites, Royal Botanical Gardens Kew, the Kew Society, the Garden Trust, Historical Buildings and Places, the GLA Conservation Team, London Borough of Richmond upon Thames, and the Strand on the Green Association. Starting with Royal Botanical Kew Gardens World Heritage Site and the assets within it, the amendments to the massing and scale of the proposal sought principally to further reduce or, where possible, remove the impact of the proposed development upon the setting and the outstanding universal value of Kew Gardens World Heritage Site. However, there is still some visual interaction between the Great Lawn and the proposed development. 11B on the screen at the moment shows the existing view across the Great Lawn. Apologies, 11B shows the proposed, with the red arrow indicating the position of the proposal behind the yellow wire line. The green wire line, now shown on view 4 on the screen, illustrates that the proposal would begin to intrude into the view along the avenue in the context of the temperate house. Again, the green wire line indicates the proposal, and the yellow wire line indicates the consented Duffy scheme. While the proposed development would begin to be visible from this view, it would largely be obscured by virtue of its positioning behind the dense tree line and would have minimal impact upon the setting of this view. The proposal would also be visible from the second floor of Q Palace, as shown in view 17 by the green wire line to the left-hand side of the image. View 14 shows a rendered visual of the proposed development behind the yellow wire line marked by the red arrow when viewed from the hive. The view demonstrates that while there is evidence of existing built form within this vista, a number of clear gaps through the trees would be filled by the development encroaching above the tree line. And as this view demonstrates, the proposal would increase the extent of visible built form from a variety of locations and would impact the setting of the World Heritage Site. It is considered that the visual impact of the proposal on the setting and significance of Kew Gardens and the assets within it would give rise to less than substantial harm within the middle of the range. There would be a minor increase in harm arising from the cumulative context, but the harm would remain in the middle range of the less than substantial spectrum. Turning to the grade 1 listed orangery, view 11C over the Great Lawn towards orangery is now shown on the screen, and the rendered visual of the proposal can be seen to the rear of the yellow wire line, marginally encroaching above the tree line again. View 11E, now shown on the screen, shows a rendered visual of the proposal behind the yellow wire line, and block A would project above the ridge line of the orangery, again disrupting its significance. However, the duration of visibility is limited, and the proposed massing would be materially less impactful to the setting of the orangery relative to the original scheme, and the harm previously identified has been materially reduced. The proposal would also be seen over a considerable distance and recognize a part of that distant backdrop. And in conclusion, it's considered the visual impact of the proposal and the setting and significance of the grade 1 listed orangery would give rise to less than substantial harm within the middle of the range. Again, there is a minor increase in harm within the cumulative context, but this harm would remain within the middle of the less than substantial spectrum. Turning to Palm House, in order to determine the visual impact of the proposed development on the grade 1 listed building, a tested of a series of views along the Pagoda Vista have been undertaken, and the plan on the screen now shows a location of these viewpoints. The view on the screen at the moment is existing view D, and now the proposed. While the majority of the development remains largely obscured from view by the vegetation, the upper stories of Block A would appear beyond the Palm House. When traveling further north along the vista, however, the amended proposed development is largely obscured from view by the large evergreen located behind the Palm House, but where visible, the scale of development would be subservient to the listed structure and set away from its skyline. The proposed development would then fall out of view before the observer reaches the opening within the trees in proximity to Palm House, as shown by the green wire line in view G on the screen. And it is considered that the visual impact of the proposal on the setting and significance of the grade 1 listed Palm House would give rise to a low degree of less than substantial harm. Regarding Kew Green Conservation Area and the heritage assets within it, the proposal would be located 450 meters to the from the northern boundary of the conservation area at its closest point. In views from Kew Green, the scheme's towers would be prominent above the roofline of the 3 to 4 story buildings which border the green, breaking the line of the trees which reinforce the village setting. View 20 on the screen shows a rendered visual of the proposal behind the yellow wire line and surrounding the silhouette of the pump house tower, and shows the introduction of built form in this view. The proposal would be seen beyond the grade 1 listed pump house tower and would remain subservient to the listed structure. View 21 shows the proposal in the green wire line located on the eastern side of Kew Green and demonstrates no visibility from this section. As such, it is considered that the visual impact of the proposal on the setting and significance of Kew Green Conservation Area and the listed buildings within it would give rise to less than substantial harm within the low to middle range. In terms of the Metropolitan Water Board Pump House Tower, which is grade 1 listed, the Kew Bridge Conservation Area and the other listed buildings within it, the subject site is approximately 25 meters from the boundary of the conservation area and 200 meters from the grouping of listed buildings. The introduction of 5 residential blocks of up to 18 stories would be highly visible in this location and would impact on the setting of this heritage asset. However, excluding the impact of the proposal on the pump house tower, the proposal would have no impact on the setting or significance of the other heritage receptors listed within my report. As shown in the existing and proposed views on the screen, view 30, the upper stories of the 5 blocks within the proposed development would be visible within the backdrop of the pump tower and would increase the presence of existing urban form. However, the proposal would be seen in the context of this backdrop and in the backdrop of this urban form and would remain subservient to the pump house tower to ensure that it would mostly remain as a prominent feature of this townscape view. From wider views, the proposal would also be visible within the context of the pump tower from both Kew Green and Kew Gardens, and Historic England object to the impact of the scheme in this regard. View 20 is repeated on the screen again and shows the proposal's relationship with the pump house tower from Kew Green Conservation Area. These views do illustrate that while the proposed development would reduce the status of the pump house tower within the context of the skyline and thereby disrupting its significance and would cause less than substantial harm, however, it is considered that the pump tower would remain as a prominent feature again of this townscape view, despite the competing elements of built form. And in conclusion, it is considered that the visual impact of the proposal on the setting and significance of these heritage assets would give rise to less than substantial harm within the lower range of the spectrum. Turning to Garnesby Park, the Grade 2 star listed registered landscape and conservation area and the heritage assets within it. View 26 on the screen illustrates the maximum point of visual impact from within the park. The proposal would introduce 5 residential blocks of up to 18 stories to the south of the park. The change to setting would be noticeable and would be seen in conjunction with the existing and peripheral context of tall buildings, which are to be brought forward further to meet policy objectives of the development plan. In addition, views A10 and A11 shown within my report demonstrate that the wireline view of the proposal from the South Terrace and Votomic Tower would largely be obscured by the existing vegetation. The proposal would appear in fleeting glimpses across the park, particularly from the west. However, this limited intervisibility does not interfere with the appreciation of the heritage value of the listed structures and their relationship to the immediate landscape setting. As such, the degree of impact on these heritage assets is attributed to cause a level of less than substantial harm approaching the middle of the range. The site is approximately 315 meters to the northwest of the Strand on the Green Conservation Area boundary, and the proposal would introduce a greater height and scale of development to the northwest of the conservation area, which would be particularly perceivable in the view across the Thames to the south. View 22 on the screen shows the existing view. This is now the proposed view, and the development will be visible in views across the Thames from the south bank, indicated by the red arrow on the screen. The proposal would be seen again over a distance, and due to their location in the far west would form part of the existing and emerging cluster at Brentford. Proposed buildings A to C would be largely obscured by the existing cluster established within the Great West Corridor, whilst buildings D to E would be visible to the west and set away from views due north. There will be some impact as a result of the development, and this will add to those existing harmful impacts of other developments. However, while the proposal would be visible, it will be at the periphery of the view. As such, the degree of impact on the Strand on the Green Conservation Area is attributed to cause a low level than less than substantial harm, accumulating to medium less than substantial harm in conjunction with other developments. Finally, there would be no harm caused to the Grade 2 listed Chiswick Bridge. The applications also propose the relocation of the Brentford Fountain to within the site along the Makers Lane between blocks A and B, and this is now shown on the CGI. Due to its deteriorating condition, the fountain is currently on Historic England's Heritage at-Risk Register, and its relocation would significantly improve its setting and significance. The relocation of the fountain is a heritage benefit of the scheme. Turning to the quality of accommodation, the plan on the screen shows the location of the dual aspect and enhanced single aspect units. While only 33% of the proposed new homes would be fully dual aspect, The scheme has been carefully considered to optimize daylight, ventilation, and outlook for all units, and improve the equality of accommodation of the single aspect homes where possible. Enhanced single aspect units incorporate secondary openings, and some other single aspect homes have oversized internal floor space, generous floor to ceiling heights, and oversized external amenity space where appropriate. Mechanical ventilation and cooling measures further ensure a high standard of internal environmental quality. The daylight and sunlight assessment demonstrates that the majority of homes in the scheme would achieve appropriate levels of natural light. Where shortfalls occur, they are relatively minor and often mitigated by design features such as balconies and generous outlooks. Given the site's urban context and its allocation for significant growth and the benefits of delivering high-density housing in a highly accessible location, the scheme is considered to provide an appropriate daylight and sunlight levels for future residents and represents a balanced and acceptable approach. The primary aspect of the proposed dwellings would be to the west and east, with secondary aspects to the north or south, depending on the location of the individual homes. The figure on the screen illustrates the separation distances between the proposed blocks, showing distances between 23 and 36.3 meters from each other, comfortably exceeding the 81 to 21 meters recommended as acceptable residential relationships. The position and orientation of existing habitable room windows in the vicinity of the subject site would also ensure that future occupiers would have adequate levels of privacy, and all dwellings would be afforded with sufficient outlook. The visual on the screen shows the proposal in the context of the future WLO station, and the GTEC Community Stadium is just visible on the right-hand side of the image across the railway line. The submission demonstrates that existing and future levels of noise and vibration associated with the freight line, as well as the future WLO station, WLO line, and the noise from the GTEC Community Stadium would be appropriately mitigated in accordance with the agent of change principles. All 856 units across the development are expected to comply with Part O overheating risk after the proposed passive and active measures are applied, and the new homes would not be exposed to adverse air quality conditions. The table on the screen provides a breakdown of the required and proposed private and communal amenity spaces. Each home would have direct access to private amenity space in the form of balconies, private terraces, or winter gardens, which either meet or exceed the minimum policy requirements. The location of the winter gardens, balconies, and terrace have been arranged in response to the environmental constraints. However, as the table shows, while the proposal would over-provide private amenity space, the scheme would fall short of the communal amenity space requirement, with only 34% proposed. On balance, although the scheme does not fully meet the quantitative standards for communal amenity space, as set out within my report, the shortfall is mitigated by the provision of a range of high-quality internal and external communal areas, along with the secured improvements to the A4 crossing and Gunnersbury Park. These measures ensure that the intent of policy is met, providing residents with meaningful, accessible, and well-designed amenity space that will facilitate relaxation, socialization, and play. The figure on the screen shows the CGI of the podium courtyard. The proposal also incorporates elements of play space across the site, which totals 3,493.15 square meters in accordance with the requirements of the London Plan. In terms of the impact on neighbouring properties, on balance, it's considered the proposal would have an acceptable impact on daylight, sunlight, and overshadowing on neighbouring properties and open spaces. With the proposed landscaping and wind mitigation measures in place as detailed within the ES addendum, there would be no likely significant effects at any location on site or in the nearby surrounding area. This would be true for the proposal in the context of both the existing and cumulative surrounding buildings. The subject site also has a spacious relationship with neighbouring residential neighbours, and the proposal would preserve the existing relationships. There would be no habitable room windows or balconies within 21 meters of any neighbouring residential property and would avoid any harm in terms of privacy. Subject to conditions, there are also no concerns with regard to noise and disturbance arising from the proposed development, either from the construction or operational phases. Turning to transport, the proposed site plan is repeated on the screen again. The proposed vehicular access arrangement include two-way access points from the Great West Road. These comprise a north-east access serving the basement parking via Makers Lane and a central access leading to the service yard. It is also proposed that the existing two-way access of Lionel Road South via the roundabout will be closed through the Section 278 works. A new emergency vehicle egress point would also be included at Lionel Road South, adjacent to the clean air route. This new point of access would then be closed and full height curb reinstated once a new station is operational. Until then, it will remain open as a one-way exit route for emergency vehicles only. With regard to Golden Mile Square, given its close proximity to the new station and Brentford Stadium, discussions have taken place regarding whether the square can accommodate the anticipated matchday crowds. A crowd modelling assessment has been carried out, suggesting that the public square is sufficient to accommodate a queuing system that allows for the maximum forecast queue lengths on match days. However, further details shall be submitted regarding event and non-event day management and an event management plan, along with monitoring arrangements through the Section 106 agreement. The West London Orbital Station is located to the south, and a safeguarded zone for the new station has been identified, and the development has been set back from the station footprint. The Section 106 agreement shall ensure that the land designated for the WLO station will be safeguarded and secured for future development. The overall reduction in vehicle trips, both in the AM, PM peaks, are also welcomed. However, based on the adjusted mode share, the proposal would result in additional bus, train, and underground trips during these peak times. As such, contributions will be secured towards bus and underground service improvements, such as step-free access at Kew Station, improvements at Gunnersbury Station, and the introduction of a new bus service. The proposal includes 89 car parking spaces in the basement as shown on screen, including 30 blue badge space for disabled parking. The level of car parking would be in accordance with the maximum standards set out by the London Plan and would align with the objectives of the emergent local plan to prioritise as close to car-free developments as possible in this opportunity area. Of the 30 blue badge spaces, 28 would be designated for the residential element, while 2 would be allocated for commercial staff. 20 EV charging stations would be installed, with the remaining fitted with passive provisions. For the residential element, the proposal would provide a total of 1,324 cycle parking spaces, split 20% Sheffield stands, 5% extra large cargo spaces, and 75% two-tier stands, although this does fall short of the policy requirement by 190 spaces. The design and layout of the cycle store have been developed with the intention of providing a suitable split of Sheffield stands, as well as standard separation distances to ensure the cycle stores are sufficiently accessible. Given the constrained nature of the site and the context of the development, it's not possible to increase the quantum of parking without compromising accessibility. And given this is the case, coupled with 87% of the policy requirement being delivered in an accessible layout, the quantum is on balance considered acceptable. The travel plan, which shall be secured through the Section 106 agreement, shall also include monitoring arrangements to ensure that further cycle parking could be introduced should demand dictate. The Section 106 agreement shall also include provisions to secure the delivery of an improved crossing along the A4 with an indicative visual now shown on the screen. The figure now shown is the preferred option for the crossing improvements and includes moving the crossing to the east, allowing for direct pedestrian movement across the A4, and would also allow for the crossing at Lionel Road South to be simplified, thereby enhancing pedestrian safety. The submitted active travel zone assessment carried out across both daytime and nighttime sets out the key pedestrian and cycle links in the vicinity and the quality of existing infrastructure. And the ATZ assessment also provides a variety of suggestions that should be implemented to mitigate these issues, which will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. Turning to the planning balance, the framework sets out that where development proposals cause less than substantial harm to heritage assets, the harm must be weighed against the public benefits of a proposal, including where appropriate, securing its optimal viable use. In terms of the heritage impacts, the slide on the screen describes the degree of harm that would be caused by the proposal on the relevant assets. I won't go through all of these individually again, but the scheme would cause less than substantial harm between the low to middle range for all of these heritage assets. There are also heritage benefits associated with the scheme, with the proposed relocation of Brentford Fountain. The slide shown on the screen now includes the associated plan and benefits. There are significant benefits for the scheme related to housing delivery, affordable housing, the optimization of brownfield land, public realm enhancements, the affordable workspace, the A4 crossing and Gunnersbury improvements, and sustainable and active travel, while there are also moderate benefits through employment and commercial space, high quality accommodation, townscape enhancements, energy and sustainability, and environmental benefits. And whilst the proposal would result in harm to heritage significance, this harm is outweighed by the substantial planning public benefits set out in my report. The scheme makes optimum use of an underutilized brownfield site within an opportunity area, delivers much needed homes and affordable homes, enhances connectivity and public realm quality, and the application and associated listed building consent is therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you. That was a long one. Okay. Any questions from the members? Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Nathan. I hope you've got some water to sip somewhere there. So really comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much. Great to see in the residential cycle parking that amount of Sheffield stands and space for cargo bikes and adapted cycles. It's unclear though if that is matched in the commercial long stay cycle parking. Can you comment on that?
Yes, that is correct. It isn't quite clear what the split would be, so we've recommended further conditions to clarify that and provide full and final details.
Thank you, Chair. Is that something the committee should do tonight, or is that?
The condition already recommended within the addendum report sets out that 20% Sheffield stands should be secured within the commercial element.
Councillor John Schroeder.
Yeah, Nathan, thanks very much again for that. Just a quick one, returning to the public amenity space, which is a bit below par already. Yeah. And I'm hoping I didn't miss this, but we have seen before, and you'll recall some of them, where public spaces such as parks, and if you recall it was Lambton Park, someone tried to smuggle that in as, there's no suggestion that Gunners have been smuggled in on the same criteria.
No, it's not. So if I just go back to the table to present the figures, so that 4,800 figure, that is just the private communal amenity space that would be available to residents. This figure doesn't include the public realm within the scheme, so the new public square, the clean air route and Makers Lane, which could be used by the occupiers, and no Gunnersbury Park isn't included. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, so we have no speakers tonight for this agenda, so let's go to the debate. Councillor Metz.
Thank you, Chair. We spent quite a lot of time tonight talking about what this project is. Given that this proposal is in my ward and Councillor Sharma's wards, I wanted to talk a bit about what the proposal was initially intended to be, because as we've seen today, the project was downscaled in size after objections from Historic England and a few other conservation societies. The resulting effect of that is that we've lost, as a community, 30 affordable homes. It may not sound like a huge amount within the sort of context of this scheme, but I've been reflecting on what those 30 homes really represent for us. The sort of 30 families that could have moved in who have been denied the opportunity as a result of this. So I just wanted to go through their objections, given that that has had quite a substantial social effect on this proposal. Their objections were not about our housing waiting list, weren't about the needs of our residents, they weren't about the quality of the homes, they were about sightlines from Kew Gardens. Kew Gardens is 2,500 feet away. In some of the images that we've seen today, I do not believe for a second that you can tell the difference between a 17-story building and an 18-story building
from that distance through the trees. I find it actually quite ridiculous that we as a committee are looking at this proposal today that has had to make that kind of modification, but it has had no real meaningful effect on this project, but it has had a meaningful effect on our community. So in my view, the skyline looks the same, but our waiting list is now 30 names longer. And I think that really matters because we on this committee know all too well about the kind of community benefit 30 additional homes could have. At our surgery this weekend, I'll tell you that a couple told me that they were living in one room with 2 children in one room. I had another family literally beg me for a bigger place because they wanted a bedroom for their daughter who's recovering from a mental health crisis and she's sleeping on the sofa. That is what the housing crisis looks like and that we deal with on a day-to-day basis through our casework and through our surgeries. So in fact, I would like to invite Historic England and all those conservation societies to perhaps come down to one of my surgeries, talk to one of our residents and look them in the eye and tell them that the sight lines through the trees, 2,500 feet away, matters more than their needs. In my view, I'm not entirely sure what we're preserving because this isn't an important community space. This is a brownfield site of disused offices. So let's be honest, I don't think Historic England are preserving London's skyline here. They're preserving a housing crisis and they're preserving the kind of situation that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I think when conserving a view outranks housing people in need, we are preserving privilege over an ability for us to deliver housing. So this story is nothing new. It's not the first time they've objected and it won't be the last. But I wanted to use this opportunity to push back against what I think are professional blockers chipping away at the homes that we need for our residents. And I think it's wrong that the postcard views are weighed more heavily than the rights for people to have shelter. So despite all of this, what is left before us tonight is still a fantastic project. I'm delighted that this is going to be built in our wards. I think the project has gone far beyond what you'd normally expect from a project of this size for delivering for our area. So I'll happily move the motion tonight because it delivers the homes that we need, but I do so with the sense of frustration that it couldn't have done just a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a second, Dan. Thank you. Okay.
Chair, just to just a point of clarity, sorry to apologise. There's 2 votes tonight. There's the list of building application. So can I assume you're moving both? And also there'll be a separate vote, and the first vote will be in relation to the listed part of the listed application, and then the substantive planning application will be second. Hope that's clear.
That's the fountain.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Tonbridge.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. I won't. I mean, Councillor Mosley spoke fantastically well about some of the issues that I think we all feel as councillors here about making sure we're providing homes for our residents. He did highlight, and I agree, and I'm sure we all do, that this development is providing over 800 new homes, whether they're affordable or not, for residents, current residents, future residents of our borough, which is a fantastic thing. This is a good scheme. It's not a perfect scheme, and by that I don't mean that I subjectively think it's not perfect. I mean, for everybody, whatever their position, it's not going to be perfect, and that's what planning is about. It's finding the right weight and the right balance on each of these different points. I would always want to maximise housing and affordable housing where possible, but I think people know, a massive advocate for heritage, and maybe I should have declared it at the beginning, possibly. I am a member of Kew Gardens, and I do understand those heritage aspects. I'm delighted, for example, that the fountain is part of this mix and is coming back to Brentford, assuming we agree it, which is fantastic. But the point I'm making is about the balance, and I understand Councillor Mosley's frustration, and I share those in some part. But I also think we've got to a good position here on balance with regards to all that we're talking about in terms of the number of homes, in terms of the number of affordable homes, which is fantastic, far more than we're seeing on many other schemes that are coming forward at the moment, in terms of the access across the A4, which I moan about constantly, because the A4 is a massive block in our borough, and creating better access right along there is really important for people on both sides to be able to access the other side more easily than they do. I won't list all the other stuff. Nathan's gone through it in fantastic detail, but I think the point there to be made is the balance is there, and I feel we should be supporting this scheme as it sits, and I'm happy to do so.
Councillor John Trent.
Yeah, just to continue really what Councillor Bruce said, we've seen many schemes come to this committee over the last few years, and I have to say I think this is one of the better ones we've seen. It ticks a lot of the boxes. It's got the potential to contribute to a brand new railway line, the West London Orbital, which is to be really applauded. It's taking a not a very great site that's in a fairly unpromising position, sandwiched between a railway and a major road, and actually making something good about it. And I have to say, from replying to Councillor Mosley, it's very unusual for someone to object or make a comment that the building's not tall enough. That is usually the major objection to a site. And I have to say, notwithstanding, and whilst I applaud your comments, Councillor Mosley, I think had they gone higher, it wouldn't have just been Historic England and Kew Gardens that have objected. I think we'd have been fighting off other objectors. And as Councillor Bruce said, I think this, whilst clearly there's no such thing as a perfect development, it is very good. It ticks a lot of boxes. Its contribution to both social and affordable housing is far better than I think anything we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years. And once again, congratulations to the developers for getting out of their way to provide as much social and affordable housing. Normally, we're sat in this committee beating them up for failing to provide or coming up with a vast range of excuses of why they can't provide it. These developers have come out front and centre and said that they want to provide it, and I think that's absolutely excellent. It's also managed to segue in a little bit of disappearing Brentford heritage in terms of the fountain, which is great, and it's going to open up, and hence my question to Nathan. It's going to open up and make Gunnersbury Park much more accessible from the south through what is often a neglected approach to Gunnersbury Park through that entrance. And I'm pleased that they're not trying to sneak Gunnersbury Park in as the amenities. So I would encourage colleagues on this panel to look at this quite seriously, and if they feel it's worth supporting, definitely give it their support.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Most of the photographs from the heritage site, in my view, the view differences were negligible. In some, I couldn't make out the difference. It's dripping with benefits, and we should absolutely approve it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Or should we move to the vote? Yeah. Okay.
Just to be clear, the first vote relates to the listed building consent for the relocation of the Brentford Fountain to land within 27 to 29 and 1053 Great West Road. So that's the first vote that you'll be taking this evening.
Okay, those for? Against? Sustained.
For the record, that's unanimous votes of 11 members for. There were no abstentions and no against. If anyone's watching this at home and counting 13 councillors, 2 were ineligible as they arrived during the presentation. So sorry about that, councillors.
Okay, now we're going to do the second vote. So 4, against, sustained. Thank you.
And once again, unanimous vote, 11 for, no abstentions, none against.
Thank you. And now we move to agenda item 5, Griffin Park, please. Okay, Matthew, would you like to present Griffin Park, please?
Thank you, Chair. So if I may, I'm just going to start off with a quick verbal addendum. So in section 7.192 of the report, this is the planning contribution sections concerning the transport section of the heads of terms. We'd just like to make a couple of amendments, one being that where it talks about cycle training, we would like to change part A to a cycle training contribution for £8,940. And on section 2C, concerning step-free access, we would like to change the wording of that to active travel. So this is Griffin Park, which I'm sure most people in the room know very well in terms of its history, formerly the home of Brentford Football Club. This is an application on the site that is integrally linked to a previous approval, which was the wider scheme for the development of the GTEC Community Stadium and the 910 flats back in 2014. So what happened as part of that scheme is, as part of the same proposal, the GTEC Stadium was proposed together with the flats up by the stadium, as most have now been built out. And this site, where the existing Griffin Park was to be demolished, and there was to be a scheme proposed for some family homes. So section 7.8 of the report basically details what was proposed previously and what is proposed now. But this is a new standalone scheme for Griffin Park, which has an uplift in the number of homes. So you can see the site in front of you again. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. I'll flick to the aerial view if that's okay. It shows you Griffin Park in the middle. That's not how it is now. As you know, it's been demolished. It is bordered by 4 roads on either side. That's New Road, Ealing Road, Bramer Road, and Brook Road South. There's the railway line running to the north of the site. So Brentford Station is to the northwest. You can see the M4, A-floor roads to the north. We're in the Brentford West Ward. But I'll move on to what the site looks like. So first of all, this is going to look at the 4 entrance points. So this is the entrance point to the stadium from Brook Road South. So this is the west of the site. This is the entrance point from Ealing Road. So this is the east of the site. This is the entrance route from New Road. So this is the north of the site. And this is the main entrance from Bramer Road, which takes you from the southern side of the site. It's difficult to get actual photos of the site itself from the outside. So this is from the Ealing Road footbridge. And then this is to the rear of Brook Road and Bramer Court. So this is to the western side of the site. And this is a plan that shows you the proposed site plan with against the stadium plan. So this is going to be reasonably relevant because when we talk about impact on neighbours, this is going to be relevant to the scheme. And this is an overlay of what has been approved back in 2014, and I should add, has been in part implemented. So it is an extant planning approval on the site versus what is being proposed as part of this current scheme. So moving on to the current scheme, this is the aerial view. What it looks like. In the centre, you have an area of landscaping. You can also see the green section is the landscaping serving the homes. And then as part of it, there are 3 main blocks and then terraced houses around the outside of the site, which is explained in more detail in this plan. So you can see central to it, there are 2 6-storey blocks, 5 stories with a setback at 6th floor level. And then around the site, you have on the western side a block which is 4 stories tall. On the eastern side is a block that is 3 stories tall. And then to the north and the south are 3-storey dwellings. And this is a ground floor plan of the site. Again, showing you the layout of the blocks and the terraced homes, moving up to the 1st floor, 2nd floor, and then above the houses, you can see the 4-storey block and then the 2 6-storey blocks above, and then a roof plan. So this is what the buildings to the south of the site look like, the 3-storey terrace buildings. So this is adjacent to and fronting onto Bramer Road. So some of them sit behind the existing terraced homes on Bramer Road. There is also that block that fronts onto Bramer Road next to them. This is to the north of the site, sorry. So these are the 3-storey buildings to the north of the site. And then this is this is the east of the site. This is the north of the site, 3-storey buildings again. And then this is the elevations in the center of the site. So you can see the 6-storey blocks there. And again, to the west of those 6-storey blocks is the 4-storey block. Hope that's okay. And then some site sections, again, looking through the site, but also you can see how these properties relate to the buildings surrounding the site. Something that this slide does as well, but this slide gives you a little bit more detail about distances involved, which I can either linger on, I can refer back to if there are questions about impact on neighbours. and then some site section comparisons. And then what the officer's done is he's input these slides, which reasonably well show you what the existing outlook was for residents when the stadium was in the site. So that's to the left-hand side, what the residents looked out to while the stadium was still there. Then there is that extent implemented permission, which is the centre slide, and then the proposed on the eastern side. So this is what properties on Bramer Road previously looked onto, what could look onto, and if this scheme is approved, what they will look onto should it be built out. And then this is a similar overlay from the new road side. So this is to the north of the site, and what properties look out onto in those scenarios as well. This is a final plan showing the proposed vehicle movement and car parking. So the sole vehicle access point is going to be from Bramer Road to the south of the site, and it is a two-way system circulating around the sites. And then, similar to previous, we've got some views of what the scheme would look like. So, sorry, I'm flicking through them too quickly. So this is a view from the junction of Ealing Road and Bramer Road at the stadium with the floodlights before, as it was when the stadium was there. And then this is a view afterwards. You can only see a glimpse view of the building to the left-hand side of that picture. Some views from, sorry, this is from the junction of Brookwood South and Bramer Road. So that's with the stadium, and that's as proposed. This is from Mafeking Avenue. So this is a reasonably pertinent view because from the south into the southwest is a conservation area. So this is as the stadium is, and then as is proposed, so you're looking out onto one of the central blocks from, I think this is actually just outside this conservation area, but from within the conservation area, you'll be able to see that. And again, Clifton Road looking east, before and after. And then junction of Ealing Road and New Road before and after. And then this is from Ealing Road looking to the southwest. So that's before with the floodlights, and this is after. And then again, so from Kew Palace, so you can barely see this one. I'm flicking between the two slides. You can just about see the building there in the context of the built form around the site. So just some CGI views. So this is facing onto the green, the central part looking out onto one of the 6-story central buildings. This is this is the green, which is central to the site, and the 6-story buildings to either side. And now we've got some views of the terrace and on the inside of the site. These are the Muse buildings to the north of the site. This is building C, so this is the building to the west of the site looking into the site. And this is the buildings from Braemar Road. So in terms of the general issues, this is a site allocation. It is allocated site within our emerging local plan. We believe it's a sensitive design and scale. Noting observations that are made about scale of buildings, I think this is slightly different to the Sega site insofar as it's bordered on all sides by homes. So there are inherent constraints to having tall buildings on the site. So we believe we've sensibly designed it to step upwards to the middle of the site. So that's important in terms of impact on neighbours. So it's been designed to step away from neighbours at a relatively low height. Acceptable and sustainably ecological grounds, 121 trees are proposed to the site, 295 cycle parking spaces spread across the buildings, 64 car parking spaces. There were, no one speaking tonight, but there were 24 objections, so I will give reference to them and suggest that I think as part of this presentation, we believe we've overcome them. But objections to overdevelopment, too tall, out of keeping to the area, light and privacy, noise, parking, traffic, infrastructure, and social housing is raised. So again, social housing, there is an affordable housing contribution as part of the scheme, which is for 30 units, which is at discount market sale, so 25% off the market sale rent. What is important for this is that the extant approval that is in part implemented has no affordable housing on the site. The reason for that was it was based on the wider scheme. Affordable, as part of the stadium development, affordable housing was proposed elsewhere, so it did not form part of that proposal. This is now a standalone scheme, and notwithstanding the fact that there was no affordable housing there before, we did go through the whole viability tested route, and it came out in deficit, so it was not viable to provide affordable housing even in the context of this new scheme. And notwithstanding that, they have provided, they are proposing 21% affordable homes. Yeah, if that's okay, Chair, I'll leave it there for questions then.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Dunn?
So just a quick one. In some of the your earlier images, in the bottom right-hand corner of the site, there's a sort of a blocked out square. What is that?
So it's land owned by the developer that is not part of the proposal. So they own that blue block of land, but they're not proposing anything as part of this scheme, so they have to show it on the plans, but it's not part of this proposal.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Nope. Should we go to debate then?
So, just a quick question about the. It's a pity we haven't got anyone here from the developer. I just noticed all the affordable are in the 1-2 bedroom categories. There's nothing bigger.
Sorry, Councillor. Are any of you from the developer?
But they're not presenting.
No, that might be able to answer a question if the chair would. Is that okay, Jimmy?
It's chair's discretion, so.
Yeah, if you don't want to answer a question, you can.
Okay, as soon as you're here. Yeah, we just noticed that you're all the affordable is at the smaller end of the market, the 1-bed, 2-bed, and the overall affordable is not particularly high. Why did you? I suppose why did you decide to make the majority or all of the affordable in the 1-2 bedroom? Was there no possibility of giving 2 or 3 bedrooms as affordable? Because as you'll probably know, and it was highlighted in the last presentation, larger family accommodation is where we do have a pressing need in the borough.
Hi, I'm Chris Cooper, so planning consultant for the applicant. The homes proposed, so they're all discount market sale, so 1-bedroom homes. We had, as part of the application, we had a housing market report prepared, which essentially set out sort of why these homes are required and why there is need for them in the borough. I think one of the really important things that we want to sort of make clear as well is, and Matt Rees touched on it, is about the relationship of this site with the stadium. So this site is very much part of the enabling residential development for the main stadium site at Lionel Road South. So there are connections between the two sites, and the viability is linked between all of these sites. And so it is as part of that this offer of affordable housing has sort of come forward. So we just want to sort of make clear that the deficit that is in place, it's all to do with this being enabling residential development as part of the stadium. So essentially funding the construction of the stadium at Lionel Road South. Gregor?
Councillor, just in more direct response to your question, you talked about larger accommodation. So when we've got larger homes within the development, it's having a registered provider with the ability to take it on that basis. And it wouldn't really be appropriate for the affordable housing provider to take that as part of the initial development, with the fact that with the quantum we're talking about, the quantum would have dropped if there was more larger accommodation to balance things out, and then it's actually getting somebody to manage it going forward. So we've actually spoken to quite a few different RPs and people about what would be appropriate for this, and designed, and this is what we've come out with as a consequence. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
Yeah, from your point, you just turn to the officers. Did we have any discussion? Because I sort of accept, even though I wouldn't necessarily agree with, the fact that if you put a few bigger ones in, the number goes down. But was that discussed with us about whether it'd be better for us to have fewer number but bigger rather than all the 1-beds? Because I noticed they're called they're 1-beds, which I know we have a need for, but we've got a pressing need for the bigger ones as well.
Just to add to the original question as well, we undertook a housing need assessment when we were considering what we might be able to put forward, and 1-bed discounted market units were considered as the most meaningful offer that we could put forward within the scheme, and being able to provide 1-bed entry-level affordable homes for people who live in the borough would be a very valuable contribution to the housing.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me, Chair. So essentially that was what was put to us. I mean, this is not a scheme that's, it doesn't meet the policy requirements as is the case is quite clear. I mean, effectively what we've outlined in the report is it's a bonus over what we've got at the moment. So there was limited engagement in terms of what more we could get from the site. As they've clearly pointed out, we have checked that they've gone through the process of trying to find providers for it. This is the best that they come up with. We're not disagreeing with that. So no, I don't think we're not selling this as a policy compliant scheme. But as I say, you'd still get the same recommendation if there was no affordable housing on the site. It's in deficit. So yeah, this is perhaps the best we thought we could get for this current proposal.
Councillor Dunn?
The square of land in the southeast corner that you own, but you're not building on, just wonder why you didn't use it.
Councillor, it's an option land that comes with us, so it's not easy to develop upon that, which is the primary reason. So on the back of that, for legal reasons, it's not simple for us to include that within the development.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the points I was making on the previous one. You know, this isn't a perfect scheme. Ideally, we'd want more affordable in terms of the number of bedrooms and that kind of thing. But in terms of what it is delivering and moving this site forward, I think it's on balance and as policy compliant in many ways. It on balance is the right thing to do. As someone moved it, yeah, I'm very happy to on that basis move it.
Second, Dan or Marina. Okay, should we move to the vote then? Those for? Against? And to state.
That's passed unanimously. 13 votes for, none against, no abstentions.
Thank you. I just need you all to note the addendum report. It is. There's no other business, and our next meeting is on the 2nd of October. Thank you very much.